Grab your beverages and turn up your interweb. Solving the world's problems 12 ounces at a time. It's Dudes and Beer.
Well, hello everybody, and welcome to episode 229 of the Dudes and Beer podcast. I am Chris Jordan, your host. I am so excited to have our guest on tonight. I have been looking forward to doing craftsman stuff, talking to blacksmiths, talking to people that are bringing old world craft back into our modern world. That is something that is so awesome, so beautiful, coming from a family of craftsmen myself, to see people working with hand tools again, non-powered equipment, things like that, bringing it back old school, making things that are built to last. And we're going to get into that this evening with our great guest, Marc Marchand of Marchand Heritage Brooms out of the Dallas area. Here in just a couple minutes. First off, I would like to welcome our new HC Universal family members. Rebecca Sounds Reveille just recently joined us, as well as the awesome Megas Elgar. If you're a parent out there, you have a preteen, anything like that, dude, Megas Elgar, go check it out. It is hilariously funny. So witty, kind of a sci-fi fantasy adventure, a la Terry Pratchett, but oh my God, so good. So excited to have them on. So excited to have Michael Fauerbach, Never Again Radio, out of the Pennsylvania area. We're going to be bringing on Matthew McPeak, who hosted our last year. We had a Dudes and Beer Fantasy Football League, Fantasy Football adjunct podcast. It was kind of a dip in the toes of the waters for the network to see if we could do a fantasy football podcast and be successful, and it was not bad. We got great numbers, so that is now splitting off on its own. Mr. Matthew McPeak with Beers and Bruisers. It's going to be great if you're a fantasy football fan. That guy is literally like a fantasy football Jimmy the Greek. It's crazy sauce. So great stuff with the network. Very excited about all that. Speaking of which, this last week we made a few announcements. Two of them were that the FBI has now officially put out a memorandum saying that conspiracy theory is a form of domestic terrorism. So all of you free thinkers on the show, all of you who like to think outside of the box, we've got a little report coming up for you from John Bound that's going to talk about that. He also hosts John Bound Politics on the network, as well as the Blah Blah Show. He has been kicked into high gear lately with everything going on. So he put together a great report for us talking about that we're going to listen to. Then we're going to listen to our newest segment for a few minutes called Ask Alexa, which is hilariously awesome. Just before we get to our guest, Marc Marchand of Marchand Heritage Brooms, let's check out this report from John Bound real quick, talking about the awesome surveillance blimps from the Pentagon that are flying over major cities right now, as well as the great fact that conspiracy theorists are now domestic terrorists. John Bound, everybody.
Recently, an FBI bulletin dated May 30th, 2019, identified conspiracy theory-driven domestic extremists as a terror threat. The bulletin states the FBI assesses these conspiracy theories very likely will emerge, spread, and evolve in the modern information marketplace, occasionally driving both groups and individual extremists to carry out criminal or violent acts. However, the Bureau said another factor driving the mounting threat is the uncovering of real conspiracies, or cover-ups, involving illegal, harmful, or unconstitutional activities by government officials or leading political figures.
10 to 12 men, 3 teams, 3 shooters. The triangulation of fire Clay Shaw and David Barry discussed 2 months before. They've calibrated their sights. They've practiced on moving targets. They're ready. It's gonna be a turkey shoot.
Beware those that question the manufactured narrative. The military-industrial complex is watching you. Sierra Nevada Corporation, an aerospace and defense company in conjunction with the U.S. military at Southcom, is conducting surveillance tests across 6 Midwestern states using high-altitude balloons, according to documents filed with the FCC. The Guardian reports the Pentagon claims the balloons are intended to provide a persistent surveillance system to locate and deter narcotic trafficking and homeland security threats. The surveillance was authorized to be carried out from July 12, 2019 to 3 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, September 1st, 2019. And they are currently surveying South Dakota, Minnesota, Iowa, Wisconsin, Missouri, and Illinois. The balloons are connected through a mesh network which allows them to share data, possibly using a video capture system called Gorgon Stare, a surveillance system comprised of 9 cameras capable of recording panoramic images across an entire city simultaneously. Jay Stanley of the ACLU says, "We do not think the American city should be subject to wide area surveillance in which every vehicle could be tracked wherever they go. We should not go down the road of allowing this to be used in the United States, and it's disturbing to hear that these tests are being carried out by the military, no less." There has been no response from the Pentagon, DARPA, Southcom, or the Sierra Nevada Corporation. None of the parties involved would say whether the Midwest vehicle data would be deleted, stored, or passed on to other federal or local agencies. Jay Stanley of the ACLU says, "We would like to know what they are doing with that data, how they are storing it, and whether they are contemplating deploying this in the United States. Because if they decide that it's usable domestically, there's going to be enormous pressure to deploy it." Even more disturbing is that Sierra Nevada Corporation isn't the only company doing the tests. Worldview recently did a dozen tests for a client they won't name, gathering data they won't reveal, protecting the privacy of the client while preying on the privacy of millions of average American citizens. John Bound.
And some of that, folks, that's there, I mean, good God, just any system called Gorgon Stare. If you're going to call something Gorgon Stare, you know, like one of the most fearsome creatures ever come up with in mythology that just turns you to stone as soon as you look at it, you intend on some frightening consequences in my book. With that in mind, you know, it was recently released that Siri, things like that, Alexa even, were able to hear your conversations in the background, that the people who listen to these conversations heard people having sex, heard people even doing drug deals, stuff like that. So in order to test this AI that's out there, I have started a new segment called Ask Alexa. Let's listen to that real quick before our guest, Marc Marchand of Marchand Heritage Brooms. Here you go. You know, the Amazon Alexa is one of the most awesome pieces of technology to come around in the last many years. It incorporates a great amount of AI and active listening technology. We know that it listens to what we do. We know that it listens to conversations. We know that it listens to you making drug deals. It listens to you having sex in the background even. And these people have access to all of that. There are people who actively listen to these things that go through recordings, stuff like that. So what we've decided to do with Dudes and Beer is to start using this technology to test the technology and to start making it just do wacky, crazy things on the regs and recording it for you guys. So welcome to our new segment, Ask Alexa. Today on Ask Alexa, in response to all of those great pornographic scenes that Alexa has been listening to, we're going to ask Alexa to play some porn music. Here we go. Alexa, play porn music.
Playing porn music on Amazon Music.
Hey, anybody here order a pizza?
Oh, hey, pizza man. Why don't you come inside?
Yeah, I got a large pepperoni for you.
Oh, you know I love a big, hot pepperoni. And so do my friends.
Where do you want me to put it?
Why don't you put that right here?
Oh, And ladies and gentlemen, I wish that I even had the vision to edit something like this together. This is actually what happened when I asked Alexa to play porn music. Not even joking. And then I let the playlist go on for like 30, 40 minutes. Dude, it went into all kinds of like creepy ASMR stuff where it was like, oh yeah, you like it when I lick your ears, don't you? Oh yeah, you like that. It was all kinds of creepy stuff. So, these are the things that AI is making possible. These are the things that AI is spending their time doing. And what people like me are going to be bringing to you on the regs, playing with the AI, seeing what we can make it do, seeing what it's actually got in its data banks. Because to know that it just pulled that out and played like an entire playlist like that. Wow. You know, because it's out there. But how frequently are people listening to it that it's on Amazon? So anyway, with that in mind, all of the crazy high-tech stuff, we are going to step into the Wayback Machine today and talk to Marc Marchand. Marchand Heritage Brooms is his company, and I really wanted, when I saw that he was doing this, I was like, dude, that is awesome. But then when I saw that he had his kids involved with this, that he had his children helping him make brooms, it was like, oh man. It took me right back to snapping peas with my grandfather on a Saturday morning, doing all those things that, you know, simple folk do, but city folk have kind of lost the grasp of. And boys and girls, I'm here to tell you, the day that your Alexa can't have something delivered to your house, the day that the internet doesn't work or the electricity doesn't work, what are we going to do? What are you going to do? Are you going to be prepared? Do you know how to can food, make food? Do you know how to take care of your family? Do you know how to take care of yourself in that kind of world? That's why we're having Marc on. So welcome to the show, Marc Marchand. Thank you so much for holding the line this evening.
Chris, thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to have a chance to be on to visit with you about this. And of course, I don't think anyone's more excited about it than my family, because they love it when someone else will listen to me babble on for a long time about some of these things. About
brooms.
About brooms and astronomy and learning how to do stuff. Yeah, absolutely.
Well, and to me, I guess when I got to high school and first got introduced to Walt Whitman, things like that, was when I first heard the term Renaissance man. And it was like, wow, okay, I'm down with that. Because I was always an encyclopedic reader. I read encyclopedias, stuff like that. My grandfather saw very early on that I was not the kid like my brother who poured his way through nonfiction, you know, that went out and got sci-fi books, went out and got horror books and just read them voraciously, 2-3 a week sometimes. While doing his schoolwork. I was the kid that would go to the library and get books on how to build lasers when I was in 5th grade. You know,
there you go. Absolutely. Yeah.
No.
And being a librarian, I really like hearing that.
Well, and I think people have, I think it's kind of sad now that many schools don't even have a library necessarily. They've got electronic libraries, stuff like that, but how has it been for you as a librarian to see, because y'all are always, a lot of people don't realize how regularly the library does pull in new technology and does incorporate that kind of stuff. So what has it been like for you? How long have you been a librarian? What's it been like for you to see this technological curve happen in the world of knowledge that you live in?
You know, it's been phenomenal. I've been a librarian. This is my 16th year. Most of my career I spent as a library administrator, and I tell people all the time, we're no longer in the information age. We're in the information overload age, and so much of the information that we're overloaded with is just not credible. And so helping people to learn how to discern good information, to seek good information is just really critical. And the amount of technology and the power and the information you can get by reaching in your pocket and pulling out a phone, it's incredible. But learning how to use the new technologies and learning how to access information, learning how to figure out what's good, what isn't good, learning how to create information with technology. I mean, you go into a public library these days, and most of them have 3D printers, so you can go in and create things and work out with something cool. Absolutely. You want to go print a cell phone case, or you've got a great idea for some new product, you want to go make a prototype, you can go to your public library and create those things.
Man, I need to get off the road and get my butt back into a library door, bro. I had no idea that they had 3D printers and stuff like that. A lot of people don't even know they got DVDs.
Yeah, well, you can even download videos now, stream them with your public library. So people are mobile, and the public library is getting mobile just right along with everyone. I tell people all the time that if the books went away, and by the way, and it's still, but if the books went away tomorrow, we would still be librarians, because you have paid professional information scientists with master's degrees at your fingertips that are there, paid for by the public good, for the public good. And so you really should take advantage of them.
Absolutely. I am a big fan of any service that you are paying for. You should absolutely reap the benefit of. You should go and take advantage of that. You know,
that's right.
Absolutely. And folks, that even goes to the fact of, and it's hard, but if you're struggling a little bit for a few months, hey man, if you pay your taxes and everything, you know, you pay for those help services. Go take advantage of those help services. That is what they're there for. That's what the library's there for. And you said something a minute ago, Mark, that is such an utter mainstay on this show, and that is how we gather and how we filter information. People have just lost the concept of information being a point of datum. Nothing more. Information in and of itself is dispassionate.
That's right.
And
that's right. And
go ahead.
So there's nothing quite as democratic as the free exchange of information and ideas. And that's one of the things that I love so much about the library. And part of the reason why I do a lot of the things that I do is because it's about experience. And it's about sharing ideas. And, if you want to start a small business, go to the library and get some help with that. You know, you're having trouble paying the light bill, go to the library. The librarians have resources and connect you to help in hard times too. Child struggling in school, go to the library.
Yeah. I remember specifically growing up, the library was my go-to. I was a latchkey kid from junior high on. So most of the time, even whenever I went to the lady who took care of us after school, that's normally where we went at least 2 or 3 days a week, was to the library. And then whenever I got into junior high and high school, at least a good 3 days a week, 4 days a week, I was in the doors of the library. Like I said, looking up stuff on rocketry, rocks, minerals, ancient fables and folklore. That kind of stuff is what fascinated me. And I could go get any of it at my public library.
Yep, you got it.
Now, with that being said, how did you, of course, through the world of the library, I'm sure, get into the world of, I guess it would be almost thatching, but broom making? How did you come across that handicraft and somewhat lost art in this country?
Yeah. So my dad is an incredible scientist. He was an oceanographer. He was working at the oceanographic office in Washington, D.C. And in fact, I was born in Falls Church, Virginia, just outside of D.C. But this was back during the Cold War, and he was doing some kind of scary stuff in rough waters around the world, and wanted me to grow up with a dad. And so he moved us back home to where my mom and dad are from in East Texas, out in the Longview area. He's an incredible artist, painter. His drawings are incredible. Stained glass is kind of what he's known for. My mom's an incredible crafter and painter, and so I grew up around music and art and science and those types of things. It was very important to my family, and the outdoors was a big part of my life. My dad taught me a lot of skills to whether it was hunting or fishing, and how to respect wildlife and harvest things appropriately, and how to care for the land and whatnot. My family of farmers, and so when I was a kid, we would take trips like most families do, and we were up in northern Arkansas, and we were looking for a place to stay. I was probably 8, 9 years old, and we ended up in Mountain View, Arkansas, up in north central Arkansas in the Ozarks, and we stayed at the Ozark Folk Center. And this is it's a state park. They have a craft village with artisans basically in residence there. That they teach pottery and candle making and soap making, and they have an apothecary shop and lots of music. And so that was my first exposure with seeing people doing those types of old school, old world crafts. It was a blacksmith, and so when as I went through college and kind of went through the transition, I was a lead guitar player back in the 80s, and I had long hair down the middle of my back. And there are pictures of me that my children will never see. And then I went off to college, and my inner nerd came out because I couldn't believe that people would let me take any class that I wanted to take. And so I was studying philosophy and physics and astronomy and and theology, and kind of chased professors and went to several different universities. And if you go to the university long enough, you end up with way too many hours, and then your dean will pull you in the office and say, "Okay, it's time to graduate." When you say we're not ready to graduate, so okay, we'll go to grad school. And so I went to grad school to the University of North Texas, is where I did my master's degree in library and information sciences, and just fell in love with the history. Of course, I had access to things I didn't have access to before, and was learning how to find the information I didn't know how to find before. To the history of the music and to early immigrants that came through the Appalachian regions and the Ozark regions. And so now that I have children of my own, I'm now taking them up to the Ozark Folk Center to introduce them to the music and to the culture and to the people and to the arts and whatnot. Now, as a library administrator, most of my career I've spent working with at-risk youth. And one of the things that I discovered in working with these kids, one, these young people are so often so incredibly gifted with artistic vision and musical talents and whatnot. And unfortunately, so many of the skills that they have, they're not captured on a standardized exam. But they've had to learn to adapt, and they've learned to overcome a lot, and they just kind of need that guidance to channel that energy. Well, one of the things that I learned is that these kids, as strong as they were, and all of the things they'd overcome, and the talents and gifts they had, there were some things lacking. They didn't know where their food came from. They you got to think about kids these days. And frankly, for the most part, I was one of those too. My fields were always ready to be harvested. I could run to the grocery store and get whatever I wanted. And I was fishing in bass tournaments quite a bit at the time, and was with a Tarrant Christian Bass Club up here in North Texas, and was working for the city of Arlington at the time, working with the Parks and Rec department. And so a friend of mine at the Parks department called me and said, "Hey, I've got this crazy idea. Let's create this character." And so I became the fishing librarian. And I tell you, I had, at the time I had a tackle sponsor, had a rod sponsor. And, so we had, my tournament jersey all made up to the fishing librarian. I even had a theme song. We had postcards with my picture on it. We did community fishing events, and all of these ponds and creeks around the city, next to where a lot of these kids lived. They had no idea you could go fishing there. And fishing is one of the things that, yes, you can go absolutely broke spending money on doing that, but you can also do it. It's very inexpensive, and it doesn't kill brain cells to do it. So there was nothing for us to have 150, 250 or more kids to show up at these fishing events. And they were learning how to bait a hook. They were learning about fish habitat. They were learning how to properly handle a fish so that you could return it safely to the water, and catch it another time. And one of the things I realized was that, these are skills that if we don't take the time very intentionally teach young people, and frankly, it wasn't even young people, just young people, grown people too. If we don't teach these things, we're at risk of losing them. So I'm an amateur astronomer. We play old-time music. I play guitar. I play mountain dulcimer.
Beautiful.
I've got my children playing music. If I haven't mentioned it in the last 5 minutes, my 11-year-old is the current Arkansas State Youth Fiddle Champion. And, of course, you have to understand, fiddle contests are just an excuse for everybody to get together and have a good time and
jam,
compete for bragging rights.
Yeah.
That's exactly it.
Yeah.
But, I'm a proud dad, so I'm going to mention that. But so I've been trying to teach my children about, we teach them how to make soap, just simple things. And we teach them not to take common things for granted in the world. Somebody had to make that.
Absolutely.
Someone had to put in a lot of labor. Yeah, for sure. So, but the problem with a lot of things that I'm interested in music and the outdoors and astronomy and whatnot, is that I didn't create anything you could hold. There wasn't anything tangible to it. And so in one of our trips up to the Ozark Folk Center, I was talking to the Brooms choir there, very, very talented artist. His name is Sean Hafer. Sean is, I think Sean retired in IT. And so like a lot of us, he had enough of that. And he and his wife, Jeanette, she was also an incredibly talented artist. They moved to the Mountain View area, and he started making brooms, and he teaches people how to do that. And so I've been reading about, broom making and some of the history and whatnot, because I'm a librarian and this is kind of what we do. And here, not terribly long ago, I reached out to Sean and I said, okay, I think I want to give this a try. How do I get started? And so he set me on a path, and I got some supplies and I started doing it, and absolutely fell madly in love with this. One of my favorite books is The Way of the Peaceful Warrior, and in it, the mentor in the Socrates, says that there are no ordinary moments, and that's always stuck with me. And I try to remember that with my children, because as a father yourself, you know how fast time flies, and you have to savor those moments. If there's no ordinary moments, there really should be no ordinary things. And the great thing about brooms is you use them all the time, but so many times you go to the grocery store, you buy a synthetic fiber broom. It has no character, has no soul. You use it, you shove it in the pantry, and you forget about it.
Works like crap.
They're exactly right. The synthetic fibers simply not
work horribly.
As well as
horribly.
They do. That's right. That's right. So that's how I got started in it. And then, I was fortunate. I spent a year at the University of Dallas as part of my undergraduate studies, and got to spend a semester with Dr. Painter, and spent an entire semester studying Rousseau's Emile. And in that book, young Emile is taken to the bottle rather than the bottle given to him. And the idea being that what you put your labor into becomes a part of who you are. Mm-hmm. And so teaching children, and especially my children, that teaching children how to do something for themselves and put their own labor into it kind of becomes part of their identity. And so that's been a really powerful force in our family with doing brooms.
Well, and, that's such a beautiful concept. I like the way that you were mentioning The Way of the Peaceful Warrior a minute ago, and talking about how there are no ordinary moments. It's up to you whether or not you have your sense of wonder in a moment, whether or not you're awake enough to appreciate a moment, whether or not you take time to smell the roses. And I myself am, as you've probably seen in pictures online, things like that. I'm a tech geek. It's what I do. My son is becoming a tech geek. It's hilarious to have a 2-year-old that knows how to work an analog patch bay.
That is interesting.
He was helping me test XLR cables today. I plugged in one side and he plugged in the other. I know grown folk that can't figure out an XLR cable. And that's all because I have spent the time, and I truly believe the fact, coming from a family of people that did welding, did craftsmanship for years and years, and even people in my family who hunted and trapped for a living, things like that. It's a different concept to, like you said, know where your food came from, know how to do these things, to know how to catch fish, to prepare them, to harvest animals properly from the wild, to know which plants are safe to eat. Like I told you before the show, I myself aspire to the fact of where I was when I was 10, 11 years old, where if you put me out in the woods, I'd have been all right. I want my child to be able to go Sparta. If he takes off, or if I just go, you need to go, he'll come back in a year and he'll have a wolf pelt around him, that he harvested. He will have found his own water and caught his own food and everything else.
Well, sure. I have 3 daughters, and I tell people all the time that, first of all, I want to raise 3 strong, independent young ladies. Now, not at 11, 9, and 7. I'm not quite ready for that. But one day, the right little boy comes along, and he's going to thank me. Now, the wrong little boy comes along, and he'll probably wish he'd never been born because they can handle themselves. Yeah.
Absolutely. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. I find it, especially when rearing children, mine's only 2, but I taught 4, 5, and 6-year-olds for years. I taught junior high, taught high school. The only real difference between them and us is at 40, you should know better than to pull people's hair.
That's right.
That's really the only difference. I have heard the deepest things in the world come out of a 4-year-old's mouth, and the most asinine things come out of 40-year-old.
That's true.
And it is how you're prepared to take things on. Like I myself consider the maintenance of my equipment, things like that, a very Zen-like process, and a way to live life. You have to maintain equipment if you want it to work right. You have to maintain yourself if you want to work right. You got to take a day or 2 off somewhere. You got to eat right. You got to get sleep, things like that. How has making brooms translated into life for you?
It truly... I didn't expect this, to be honest. You would think that as much as I have read and studied, and I was very fortunate to have a phenomenal education, and exploring different concepts from different cultures and different faith backgrounds, and you try to look at the world with open eyes and to see things in unique ways. And so you really would have thought that in starting making the brooms, that I would have had some kind of romantic idea about what would come from that. And to be completely honest, I didn't. I thought they were beautiful. I thought they were unique. But it was just something I wanted to try because I was just fascinated by the process, fascinated by the history. But in the shop where I'm making the brooms, I realized something just a couple of weeks ago. Absolutely nothing in that shop happens quickly. I use antique hand drills to drill the holes in the handles. I sort the broom corn by hand. I take my time with everything that I'm doing. I just kind of learned how to be in the moment in making these brooms. And then I really enjoy when I'm sitting there, it's frankly for me, it's a time for prayer. It's a time for contemplation. I like to think about where that broom is going and the stories that it's going to tell. I had a friend of mine when I was in college, one of my roommates, and he absolutely would not read a brand new book. He would only read a book from the library or from a used bookstore. And the reason for that is he loved the idea of shared adventure, that someone else had loved that book.
Yeah.
And I find the exact same thing that happens with the brooms. I love making them. I love the creativity. I love the time. I love the time with my daughters out in the shop, working on the brooms. And I love the idea that I'm making something that someone else will use on a daily basis, and hopefully they will enjoy it as much as I enjoyed making it. And that's a pretty profound thing because it really translates into so many of the things that you do in life. You go through the motions. It's incredible the things we take for granted, the moments that we take for granted, the items that we use, our tools that we take for granted on a daily basis. And so when you become intentional in your thinking, you become intentional in your actions, something really incredible happens to you, and it's healing. And it's healing in ways that you didn't even know that you were broken and needed that healing. But that's exactly what it's done for me.
Absolutely. That is such a beautiful message, Mark. I try to explain to people daily, I have a career, I don't have a job. I'm my own boss. It's great. It's stressful, there are slow times during the year. The business ebbs and flows with the live AV market. I kind of know when those are, but it's one of those, I don't know why there are so many curmudgeon sound guys and video guys and lighting guys. Like, dude, you get paid to play with people's expensive toys. What stick broke up your ass? Pardon my language.
Right.
Like, what? Pardon the analogy, but where'd the broom handle break off?
That's right. Don't take it for granted. That's right.
Good golly, somebody is paying you to do what you supposedly love to do.
That's it. That's exactly it. You're right.
Like, if I'm not out on the road doing it, I'm here in my home studio, like rewiring things, relabeling things, racking things up, changing the way things work. Like, I can't not do it. I'm driven by it. I love it. And when you make that your going effort, like you said, it becomes a catharsis. There is a beautiful healing process that happens.
Yeah, that's exactly. And I'll tell you, for me, as a career public servant, even on the most stressful days, I can't wait to get back to the office the next day. The team that I work with, the hearts that they have for service, the things that they do behind the scenes that no one sees and no one knows. That is a very beautiful thing, to be able to be a part of someone else's story, to be able to share an experience with someone. And I think that's part of the reason why you're seeing such a move towards handmade items and old skills that are coming back, and people are learning how to do things for themselves. I mean, one of the greatest things, I loved it. A friend of mine, when the prepper TV shows were on, and he was really getting into this. The most fun part of that for me was watching him learn new skills and getting so excited and calling me and going, dude, you won't believe what I just learned. You won't, and that's what we really ought to do. We ought to be excited about learning things. We ought to be excited about creating things, and we ought to be excited about sharing that knowledge. It has to be passed on. It has to be done intentionally. And sometimes it takes, there are strange catalysts for why people do the things that they do. People ask me, and I've got quite a testimony about, well, why did I get into the profession that I did, and what motivates me to do the things that I do? Well, everyone has that story. Everyone has that within them, but not everyone has found that creative outlet to be able to express that.
Yeah.
And I think that that's one of the things that, I love technology because it's a powerful tool. It's enabled us in so many ways to connect with each other all around the world and create quite a global world, and it's also distanced us in so many ways. Several friends of mine and I, years ago, were talking about automation, and at the time we were talking about at the grocery store. You go to the checkout, you scan your items, the thing never worked, and it was frustrating. But it was, well, what is the place of technology like that in society, and what's it going to do to us? And we all predicted that, well, at some point, people are going to get tired of being disconnected, and they're going to seek out new ways to connect with each other. And I think that that's where the arts really come into play. There's something beautiful. There's something comforting about learning how to do something for yourself and sharing that with someone else. That's how you build community.
Yeah.
When I was a kid, we would go to my great-grandparents' farm, and we pick vegetables all day. And my happiest memories of my childhood were in the farmhouse at night with my great-grandmother, my grandmother, my mom, my great-aunts, all cooking and canning, and I could eat all the vegetable soup that I wanted while they were doing this. But walking into their pantry and seeing shelves full of jars of food was just one of those comforting feelings.
Yeah.
And I get that feeling when I go to the Folk Center, where I serve now. We have a 33-acre historic farm where we preserve Texas history and culture and the arts, and we have sculptors, and we have master naturalists. And my family goes out and we volunteer and we play music, and my wife has taught how to churn butter, all kinds of things like that. It is just incredible to see the look on people's faces, not only because they realize it's something that they can do, but so many people have that happy memory from their childhood that they may not have thought about it. Snapping peas with grandma, those types of things.
Yeah, exactly. I just had a hilarious image in my head of Betsy churning butter. I just saw it, like
she's really good at it.
Milkmaid
really
outfit and everything. Yep. It was right there in my head as soon as you said it. And things like that, they're so essential. Like you say, the history has to be passed down. I myself come from Cajun heritage, and Cajun is one of the few cultures that is actually indigenous to America, uniquely American. And even now, to see one generation, that's all it takes. One generation, the language is almost dead. The songs are almost forgotten. The traditions are almost forgotten. And it's like, wow. That's all it takes is one generation of lapse. And that can be gone. Now, granted, a lot of that with the language and everything else, it was a point of shame in a lot of communities to use your Cajun language because it was a language of ignorant people, things like that. So it was hidden. They didn't teach it to their children because they didn't want their children to go through stigma. And even when they went to school, if the nuns heard them speaking Cajun French, they would, spank them, put them in the corner, that kind of stuff. So, strange things like that, but it's so easy for, like you said, history to get lost, for tradition to get lost. And I think we as a culture now have come up to the point, I've taken a few people under my wing to teach them my trade. I'm not saying that education is not a good thing. Education is a great thing. It's awesome. But I'm also here to tell you, college is not the answer for everyone.
No, you're spot on with that. I learned several years ago that while we were encouraging young people to go to college, get advanced education, I think we inadvertently, in many cases, sent the message that it was the only way, and it's just not.
Take your shop class if you want. That's a fun elective, but don't expect to be turning wood for a living. Don't expect to be making stuff with a welder for a living now. Like
that's right.
And seriously, I don't divulge what I make, but dude, if I knew that I could be making what I'm making for what I did in technical theater in high school,
Mm-hmm.
Literally. It was like, wow. My life would have been totally different. There would have been 8-9 years after I left the seminary of like not being confused about what I needed to do with my life.
Right. That's exactly right.
And
well, two things right now that if you want to be assured of a job, get a CDL and learn how to weld.
yes,
You'll never be out of work.
Yes, absolutely. I was just literally working a major conference where I sat in with like 100 CEOs from major companies that had a Harvard economist up there talking with them about automation and everything else. And he was talking about automated 18-wheelers and stuff like that, and how people are saying it's going to take jobs away. And he's like, do you seriously think that companies would be spending billions of dollars to develop automated self-driving 18-wheelers if there were people lining up out the door to come be a tractor truck driver?
That's right.
He was like, the issue is nobody wants to be a tractor truck driver anymore. They've been told not to do it. They've been told that turning a wrench, like, cool, you want to work on a car on the weekend, go ahead, but you need to do something in the business world. Like, you know how much an ASE mechanic makes just to change your oil?
I just had some repairs into my truck, and I can tell you, I was
the labor was more
than
than the parts. Twice as much.
More than the parts.
Twice as much.
Absolutely.
Easy.
Yep. Yep.
Even trades like barber, things like that. It's like not many people know that barbers and nurses are the only people that can legally use a straight razor. Like, you got to be licensed to use a straight razor. That's wild. But
that's right. That's why I have a beard.
Yeah. It's interesting to me how we as a society have turned away from these trades. And now we're starting to come back. I think now that I guess our generation is kind of coming up, we're like, hey, you know what was really cool? Like watching my grandfather use a wood lathe, like a hand lathe, and join stuff together and make cabinets. Like that was awesome. I remember watching my grandfather, do stuff out in the garage, out in his carport, that kind of stuff. Those were the things that drove me. And the day that I stopped getting broken items as presents to fix or take apart, the day that it became like, all right, that was cool that you did all that inventing and playing around with circuits and everything, but you should really put that away now and figure out what you want to do. Like, wait a minute, that's what I do. Like, literally, that's what I get paid to do now. I even have a business that modifies guitar pedals. So it's like, when I was a kid and I was taking things apart and putting them back together in different ways, like, I was training myself for that.
And remind me, I have an 80 AMP1 that I need to send to you.
But
it's one of those holdovers from back in the 80s. So,
yeah. Well, it's just, so frequently, I guess my wife and I put it in the realm of, we're not going to crush the dream. We just won't. Like, I see it as the point of, I will naturally see what my child is inclined to do, and I will encourage that, and I will foster that.
That's right. Right. Well, reading some of the Platonic dialogues, I can give you no positive knowledge. It's just basically it's a matter of pulling that out of you. You already know it inherently.
Yeah.
And I think that's something where you're seeing more young people getting interested in trades and learning to work with their hands and solving problems and creating something. Because at the end of the day, they can look at it and say, I created that. I built that. And then seeing someone else use it and enjoy it is just a profound connection. The wonderful thing, too, is while we're seeing that trend begin to truly emerge and be embraced by communities all over the world, is that there's so many good people out there who are working very hard to keep these skills alive and to pass them on. I can't speak highly enough for interpreters at some of these living history museums and artisans who host classes. Later this week, I'm going to get to spend a couple of days with Sean Hafer up at the Ozark Folk Center, and I mean, just to be in his presence and watch him work with thousands and thousands and thousands of hours worth of experience going into those brooms, and how efficiently he works, and the beautiful things that he creates, you don't take that for granted. And you realize that it's something that's important to maintain. It's something that's important to pass on. People need to be exposed to those types of skills and those crafts. And of course, I've told people, here recently that I think one of the worst things to happen to the broom was the vacuum cleaner. And one of the great things these days is that so many people are getting rid of their carpet. They realize just how unhealthy carpet is.
Yeah.
And so they're getting rid of it, and then they're going to the store and they're buying those synthetic brooms that just don't work. They leave little trails of dust behind them. They're frustrated. And when you pick up a natural broom corn broom and use it, and you realize that, I mean, this is something that's sustainable. It's something that's renewable. It gets better as you use it for a very, very long time, as long as you take good care of them. And it becomes an experience. It kind of going back to Rousseau's Emile. What you put your labor into becomes a part of who you are. And that can be even in the most mundane daily chores that you do.
Yes.
Put yourself fully into it. Make a connection in that. It just brings out something so incredible. Not only is it beautiful, but it's a profound connection to other people in the world. And it's something that, I mean, that's what we were put on earth to do, is to help each other and to build community. We're not solitary creatures. That's not how we're hardwired. And so we need to find those outlets. We need to find people who are willing to share those things. And I will say, it's not just a matter of supporting small businesses and supporting artisans, but go and learn how to do it for yourself. Experience it. Make your own broom.
Yeah, precisely. And folks, believe me, that's not me saying don't go and buy a broom from Marchand Heritage Brooms. Definitely go buy a broom from them. Hop on, check out their work. Like he's got some, like you have one that you're getting ready to enter into a contest that is like forged in fire status, dude. Like deer horn, different colored broom corn, like absolute, like you said, works of art to be used in the home, to be used on the daily, to make that regular routine thing that you're doing with your hearth something sacred, something personal. Not something that's, like you said, just turning on a Hoover.
That's right.
Or pulling out your $9.99 broom from HEB. Let's get a little bit into the construction, because as opposed to like Forged in Fire, probably one of my favorite shows out there right now. I love that show. I could have it on in the background, like for all eternity. It's just great. And shows like that are coming out all over the place as people are returning to the handicraft, the original industrial arts, glass blowing, upholstery, all kinds of things. How does one go about making a broom?
Well, so, and because I enjoy the history and because I'm a librarian, I'm compelled to tell you a little bit about what we're looking at in the brooms that we're making, and that so many of my fellow craftsmen across the country are making. Broom corn is actually not corn. It's there's three different types of sorghum. There's the type that you make syrup out of, the sweetener. There's the type that's used for feed, and then there's broom corn. And broom corn is really not good for anything except brooms.
Yep.
The story is told that Benjamin Franklin got a broom that had some seeds still on it, and he sent them to a friend of his, and anyway they grew it and then kind of that's kind of how it came to the Americas. It probably came sooner, but there was at least that documented case of broom corn being mentioned. And the Shakers are actually the ones that created what most of us know as the kitchen broom, the regular household broom, the flat stitch broom. And what they did was, before that, most brooms they were round. So they take the broom corn, they wrap it around a stick with cord, wire, something, whatever they had, and then they flattened it when they were sweeping it, and it wasn't very efficient. Well, the Shakers, being very interested in efficiency and everything having a purpose and being very intentional, discovered that when they flattened that round broom, and the round broom is called a besom, when they flattened it and they stitched it flat, it was much more efficient. So the flat kitchen broom that you see is a very American broom, which is kind of neat. It was established and created by the Shakers, which is also kind of neat. And so the way that I make my brooms is I start with processed broom corn. That means that the stalk has been cut down, the seeds have been removed, and it's cut to size. And we call that processed broom corn hurl, and HURL. And so the hurl is wire wrapped around the broom handle, and with an interior layer, and then I wire in a shoulder, and the pressures that I'm wrapping these brooms under are incredible. I use my shoulders, my back, and my legs to power all of this, and then there's all kinds of wonderful things that you can do once you kind of get that basic round besom on the handle. You can we could dye broom corn, and we can put color into it and do some very interesting things that way. I can take what we call the hobby corn, which is longer stalks of broom corn that actually has the stalk on it. And we soak that in water and get it kind of pliable, and we'll wrap that on top of the interior hurl onto the broom handle. And then we plait it, which is what gives it that kind of basket weave look, and you can do very interesting things that way. And once you get all the broom corn, secured to the handle that way, then we flatten it in a vise. And I actually use two boards. I'm looking for one of the old Shaker broom vices from the early 1900s, late 1800s. They're very hard to find. So many times they're in museums, but once in a great while, you'll find somebody who's willing to part with theirs. So I'm still looking for that. So mine are simple hand vices, and then we stitch them tight. And we have a broom corn cutter. Mine was made about 1893. It's all original wood, cast iron cutter, and all the hardware on it, and so it's cut to size to make it even, and we stick a label on it, and we send it to its new happy home. And I tell you, what's been for us, we can't make them fast enough. People are wanting them; they have orders and things they'd like, and when they see one that they really like, to say, hey, can you make me one like that? Well, like that is about the best I can do, because no two brooms are ever, just alike. And so we can't quite keep up with demand, but that really makes it a lot of fun, because we know that they're going to places where people will enjoy them. It takes a lot of work to put in, into each of the brooms. And I had a friend of mine who messaged me recently, who found a handmade broom in Santa Fe, and it cost about 4 times what I charged for mine. She said, "You're really missing the boat." And I told her, I said, "Well, one, I want people to actually use these things, and if it wears out, just call me. I'll give you another one." The other is, I'd like to go to heaven someday. So the point isn't to make a lot of money. The point is to make something beautiful that people will enjoy, and to make a positive difference in their lives. And, who would have thought that you could do something like that with something as common and ordinary as a broom?
Well, and that's just it. Your stuff, like you said, it is functional works of art. And there's a far cry difference between charging the price of a work of art that kind of discourages people from using your broom.
Right. That's
you know?
right. Exactly.
Like I know people that have like crazy classic cars and they never ever take them out on the road. And it's like, I mean, that's cool that you own it and that you can look at it anytime you want, but you seriously never drive it?
Right.
What's the point of owning that sweet car?
That's right. If I've got it, I'm using it.
I'd gladly spend many zeros less on one that I could drive down the road.
That's right. Well, so, I'm a musician and one of my, I kind of a magpie, I like bright, shiny things, but I collect Martin guitars in particular, although I just added an old late 40s, early 50s Gibson guitar. But I had one that there's only 91 of them made in the world. Before World War II, Martin guitars made the D45s, and they only made 91 of them. Well, they made a commemorative one about 13 years ago, something like that. Well, I happened to, at the time, I got one. And so it lives in the case, and I checked the humidity, and I locked the bedroom door, and I would take off my belt, and I'd look like a spider monkey, open the case, and I'd very carefully take it out, and I'd play it, and then I'd carefully put it back and put it away. So we were actually up in the Ozarks playing music about 4 years ago, and I was talking to another musician down on the courthouse square, the Pickett Park, and I had a different guitar with me. I was talking about that one. He said, why didn't you bring that one? I said, well, I want to keep that. And he said, Mark, do you think that your daughters would rather inherit a guitar that is pristine museum quality, or do you think they'd rather inherit one that Dad actually loved and played? And that really spoke to me. I thought, oh my goodness, that he's right.
Yeah.
So I'm careful with it, but I do take it and I do play it. It's got a little playware on it.
Good.
And I think that's the thing is that so many times when we do get something special like that, my grandfather made a mountain dulcimer for me. I fell in love with one, in fact, from Folk Center when I was about 14 years old. Couldn't afford one, and he was a carpenter, and unbeknownst to me, he bought the plans, and for Christmas he had made me a dulcimer, and so I played that. And so, there are things like that that are very special, and we certainly understand why people, maybe want to set that aside. But what that does so many times is we miss opportunities to build memories with those things, to experience things, and life is for living. And so, that's what's great about a broom. It's a broom. It's broom corn. It's wood. It's wire. Use it. Wear it out. It should look pretty hanging in your kitchen, but use it. And when you use it, I'll build a new one. I'll send it to you, and then you can enjoy that one, and life goes on. I think that there are certain things that just really should be used, and a broom is just one of those. So that's what we try to create.
Yeah, and I think it's such a beautiful concept that you have, like I said, to bring your family into it, to spend time. I love seeing the pictures online of your kids making brooms with you, doing that kind of stuff. Like you said, being able to pass that knowledge on, being able to enable your children in a different way.
Yes.
And
seeing the sense of accomplishment on their faces.
Yeah.
Watching them solve problems and figure things out. Seeing them take the initiative and want to go out and create on their own. Those are the things that just really, really, they warm your heart, and you realize this is why we do this. Is for that next generation. Absolutely.
I could not have said that any better. Now, with that in mind, you've obviously made this a going concern for yourself. You're obviously taking this up a notch. Everything else. What does the future hold for you right now, as far as the broom industry goes?
It's a really, really good question. This may be a bit of an unusual answer, but it's truly an honest one. A lot of my ministry work has taken me places and working with folks that I might not otherwise have have had an opportunity to work with. And one of my ministry partners several years ago, it was pretty frustrating what we were dealing with, and some of what we were going through with the people that we were serving was kind of heartbreaking, and it was really kind of getting to me. And one of the things she said to me when we were talking about it, kind of how to navigate that, she said, look, our first job is to show up. Our second job, get out of God's way. And so in doing the brooms, to be completely honest, we're just showing up. We're seeing what happens with it. We're enjoying the moments that it brings us and to others. And so we're going to get out of God's way and just kind of see what happens. It really wasn't intended to be, another job or anything like that. But it's really done something incredible for me, for my family. It's wonderful to be able to share that, and so I really don't know where it will take us. Once in a while, I have an idea of when I retire fully and what that's going to look like and what I'll do. And so I don't know, because I really don't. We're just kind of enjoying the moment, and we know there are no ordinary moments, and so we're not making ordinary things, and we'll just see what happens.
Beautifully said, man. Beautifully said. Because you can put whatever you want to on it, but if you're not looking for those moments, you're definitely going to miss something. And it's right. Like I said, it's nice to see you treating this as a family thing and doing it with your family and using it as experience with them. Such a beautiful thing to see in this harried day and age. If you could, tell everybody where they can go to get a hold of you, where they can go to check out your brooms, to order a broom, anything like that, Mark.
Yeah, thanks for so we have a Facebook page. It's if you'll just look us up on Marchand Heritage Brooms. Look at some of the pictures and kind of follow us along. See what we're doing along this journey, and if you see something that you like, just send me a message. And so many times people will just post a comment and they say, I want that one, and I try to respond as quickly as I can, or one of us tries to respond as quickly as we can. And we say it's yours, and then we'll just we'll work to get it to you. So we try to keep it simple. If you see something that you like and it's already been spoken for, well, we'll make you one, similar to it, and we'll send you a picture, and you can see if that speaks to you as well. But we try to do something that is unique. One of the things that someone asked me recently, they said, what about spirit brooms? My university colors, my high school colors, whatever. Oh. I'll do that, but there's a broom squire that I follow. They're up in the Pacific Northwest, and the way that they do theirs, you order a broom, you can tell them I kind of like dark colors, light colors, whatever, but you don't get to pick your broom, and so they make your broom for you, and they send it, and when you open the box, you get to see what broom was made for you, and I just love that because there's so few surprises in life, and our first daughter, our first child, we didn't know. Boy, girl, anything like that until she made her presence in the world, and it was just a beautiful thing, and so that's kind of what I'm thinking eventually the model might look like. But we want people to be happy. We want people to have something that speaks to them, that's unique to their personality, their likes, and so go into our Facebook page, look at the photos. If you see something you want, let me know. We'll try to get you something similar. If you have a special occasion, something like that's coming up, and you'd like a particular broom, just let us know. We'll do what we can to accommodate. Absolutely.
And just so you know, folks, we will be putting links up to their stuff on the Dudes and Beer podcast website as well. They're in our favorite links section. They're under our sponsors section, everything else. Welcome to that, Mark. Hopefully we can get as many people as possible out there to understand what it is to bring something old world into their new world home and into their new world life. To have that return to something so simple and so basic that just works and lasts, that will not be a point of frustration whenever you go to clean.
That's right.
Things like that. So thank you so much for taking the time to come on to describe your craft, to describe this mission that you were on, to bring this kind of old world craftsmanship back to life in America, back to life in our next generation, trying to bring about that active interest in the world. Thank you for that.
Well, Chris, thank you very much for having me on. It's been an incredible honor, and I appreciate all you do to support, artisans like myself, and really enjoyed the conversation, and I'll look forward to doing it again sometime.
Oh yeah, no, most definitely. We will have to talk to you about library work, just the use of data in the world, things like that. It's been a true pleasure, Mark, to have you on this evening and to talk with you tonight. So, and over the last few days as we were preparing for this. So, I look forward to many, many great conversations in the future, my friend.
Well, I appreciate it, Chris. Me too.
Fantastic. Please do hold the line while you are online checking out the great work of Marc Marchand and family at Marchand Heritage Brooms on Facebook. Make sure to go on by, join the Dudes and Beer Facebook group. We actually just posted a video today, a video message to our listeners, just thanking you guys for everything that y'all do, for the great involvement that has picked up in the group. It's been great to see you guys having debates, open conversations, things like that. That is exactly what this is about. That's what we need in the world. So while you're online joining the Dudes and Beer Facebook group, going by liking the page, make sure to stop on by dudesandbeer.com. That's where all the episodes are. That's where links to Marchand Heritage Brooms is. That's where links to our other sponsors are. Make sure to go on by, check out the Dudes and Beer Knowledge Vault with all the great downloadable PDFs of government programs that have been declassified, as well as UFO documents, scientific studies, all kinds of things, points of data that you need to know so that you can make informed decisions in the world. While you're online, do make sure to check out the great work of the HC Universal Network. And remember, folks, above everything, take care of yourselves. Take care of each other. Make sure to do something good in the world. And whatever you do, make sure that if you can't be good at it. We'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Dudes and Beer Podcast. To listen to our audio streams or chat with us live, download the official Dudes and Beer app for Android and iDevices, available on Google Play and iTunes markets. For more episodes, content, and information, visit us online at dudesandbeer.com. You can also find our episodes on Breach.tv, iHeartRadio, Spreaker, SoundCloud, iTunes, YouTube, Stitcher, or your favorite podcast service. Dudes and Beer is a proud member of the HC Universal Network family of podcasts. For more about our sponsors and other podcasts on this network, visit hcuniversalnetwork.com. Thanks for listening, everybody, and until next time, drink responsibly.